Thank you so very much for this opportunity. A lot of what I'm going to say will perhaps sound very similar to what some other people have brought up, because there are really a lot of themes that come forward. I'm representing Townshippers Association, which was formed back in 1977 following a recommendation from Camille Laurent himself. And he offered this as an opinion. He said, you know what you guys need down there in the townships? You need to have an association that will represent your community to the government, so that the government, and he used these, your government, can be better informed about your aspirations, your desires, your needs, your values. And in that, then one of the things that we have been consistent about over the years is in fact trying to, whoever happens to be in power at the time, to bring forward our understanding of what is happening and how to present it. Moi-même, je suis le produit d'un mariage entre un anglophone et un francophone. Mon épouse est juif, est immigrante des États-Unis. J'ai du Mi'kmaq et du Huron dans mon sang. So I can legitimately claim that I am truly a mix that reflects the Quebec society in general. And what we deplore in this bill is, in fact, looking at what is the reality of the English community now. At the time of Confederation, the English community was, in fact, the dominant, the most larger of the communities that had settled in the historic Eastern Townships. At one point in time, Gaelic was actually the second language. Following the introduction of the railway, there was a steady outward migration of English speakers. And with Bill 101, our numbers were absolutely devastated. We now are, in fact, that community that Colin described so well. We are poor, we are undereducated, we have more major illnesses, and particularly mental illnesses, than our Francophone counterparts. We are underemployed, and we have the missing middle that is huge. So that when we look at Bill 96, one of the first things that comes up, and it is a question that we have asked in several of these hearings, is that if, in fact, the claim is put forward in Bill 96 that we are a valued part of this Quebec nation, then what follows is, if this is so, why is it so evident that once we start to look in depth at this bill, it emerges as, in fact, a very well thought out, well planned undermining of everything and anything that seems to be attached to the English community, its heritage, its identity, our values. So we feel that in a very significant way, this whole question of asking the question, are we les vrais Québécois? Is one that, in fact, I asked Mr. Deneville in an exchange that I had that dates back to Bill 60, in which I asked him, and said essentially, I am tired of being told I am not Québécois. I'm told I'm Canadian. And now what I'm being told is that I'm a valued member of the Quebec society, and yet everywhere I turn a page in this bill, I see a measure that countervenes that. And there, I think, coming at it from a different angle, we're going to propose that there are two main ways of approaching that whole definition of a nationhood in the popular sense. The first one is to describe a group of people that inhabit a territory, that have a set of values that they have it can be defined in many ways, but basically it is a concept of nationality. And the best way to determine one's nationality is take out your passport, which I will proudly take out at any time, and it tells me I'm a Canadian. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of mon héritage. That comes from my mother's side. The other more popular sense of a nation is one that is based on having characteristics that can be defined and observed, so that we can talk about being someone who is a part of a nation because they have the common language. It could be a common religion. It could be other characteristics, but it's a bit like a club. It's a tribe in many ways, because you can't get in unless you can display that you have the necessary characteristics. So if, in fact, the Quebec nation has only one language, one set of values, then where do we fit? Please, Mr. Steets, don't tell me that I am, in fact, a Quebecer when you are introducing through your government laws that undermine everything that would possibly make that true. And I think what we have to look at then is that what are some of the most draconian measures that you'll find in this bill? And one of them that of course comes up, it is something that we've talked about and almost everyone has addressed in one sense. And that is the charters of rights and freedoms at both the federal and provincial level. In this bill, it clearly states that the intention is to insert the National Assembly as the sole arbitrator when it comes to issues pertaining to rights and freedoms of its citizens. This has to be one of the most objectionable of all, because when you examine this closely, what it comes down to is something rather interesting from a political point of view. If a government is formed because they have succeeded in an election to have the largest number of seats, they become the ruling party. It means then, by the use of the parliamentary procedure known as closure, they can pass any bill they want. With 37% of the popular vote, the government can in fact pass just about anything it would like. This then means that at any time when there's a change of government, then the rights and freedoms can be also changed. This is why fundamentally in a constitutional democracy, we must have the rule of law, whereby even governments must be held responsible for their actions to the population. And the only way in which we can measure a government in terms of its ability to act with moral dignity is the intensity with which they adhere to the letter of the law. And in this case, it means that if you look at the charter, the Quebec Charter, which was passed 7 years before the federal charter, it was sent out to every single household. And it was something that became a landmark of how you measure rights and freedoms. They proposed then to even say that this bill will be subject to the conditions set out in '96, meaning that all of our rights and freedoms will be defined in terms of one language and one language only. But the draconian approach doesn't end there. There will be a minister of de la langue française. There will be, in fact, then powers given to the agents who work for the inspection. It was not just an inspection agency anymore, but l'Office de la langue française will become a policing force. And unlike the Sûreté du Québec, they will not have to get a warrant. They can march right in. And this is where every single Québécois should be very, very cautious, because especially in rural areas, the backbone of the economy is small and medium businesses. And in the townships, most of the businesses are owned and operated by our French-speaking neighbors. They will not be immune from this. It can be so simple as me sending someone who works in the office a joke that happens to be, it comes by on the internet, so we send it off, and it's in English. And someone's just received a negative performance evaluation. So they report us anonymously. That puts us in a category of societies that, in fact, are very, very much distinguished by the absence of rights and freedoms. And if this is allowed to continue, we can see that the remaking of Quebec society is one that is going to be very, very scary. Scary enough so that my oldest son, who's been away with his family, have lived in Newfoundland for 20 years, was contemplating returning to Quebec. I sent him a copy of this bill, and he said, no, this can't be possible. And I said, are you still thinking of coming? And he said, are you crazy? Why would anyone want to come to Quebec? So what we're also not evaluating properly is what's going to be the economic fallout. The intensity of this somehow, the notion that the English language is the boogeyman that is hiding in the closet, that is putting an end to the vitality of Quebec, of course, is a total myth. Is that we are people who have tried our very best to be bilingual, to be active, to be partners, to participate. And I think that one of the factors that we're going to have to carefully evaluate here is that there will be people who will say, I am not going this time. No. And we have stayed. And isn't it a shame that just to get a sense of being a part of this collectivity, that we will be treated in a fashion that is absolutely unconditionally reprehensible. So I don't know how to sum things up, but I think there's a great deal of credibility also to be given to the fact there's a lot of bear baiting with this bill. And it is, in fact, a win-win for Mr. Legault, because if it's passed and unchallenged, well, here we are. We have sovereignty association with absolutely no referendum at all. We don't even have to have that vote. We did it. See? I think this is very appealing to Monsieur, Madame, tous les jours, that have been fed a line through a government that is in, I don't say they're in cahoots, but they certainly have the ear of the certain French media that have made a bit of a living out of what I would describe as Anglo bashing. So we have to take in mind that this may be the case. The other is that if we go to court and we win consistently, yes, indeed, the winning formula has finally been found. Those darn English and their courts, see what they've done. They've taken away our right to rule ourselves. And I think this is one of the themes that we are going to have to confront. And unfortunately, we can't seem to get that positioning in the French media to be able to bring the message forward so that people can understand that when you take away rights and freedoms, it's for everybody. When you take away the ability for companies to compete effectively because they're not supposed to do so, because they might have to do it in English, because after all, we are in North American trade agreements, and the single greatest customer happens to be south of the border, and they speak American. It greatly resembles English, but we know that there is a base in which we can sell Quebec, made in Quebec. Quebec Inc. is powerful, it's dynamic, and people in the business community, I think, need to wake up and see what exactly this could mean in the long run. Anyway, I feel like many of us here this afternoon could speak at great lengths for a very long period of time about what we think is happening. We can see it, we can demonstrate it, and we're going to have to take up the mantle, and we're going to have to be very courageous, and we're going to have to make sure, et ça va être absolument nécessaire, qu'on se rencontre tous les gens qui sont alentour de nous, qui sont de l'expression de la langue française, pour les expliquer dans les conditions, les termes très, très simples à comprendre. Là. Parce que souvent, quand on commence à parler de la Constitution, on voit que les gens, oh, je comprends rien dans ça, mais put it in simple terms. How are you going to compete on the global market? Did you know that someone can come in and they can seize your computer? And I think in those terms, we can. It'll be it's a long haul, but we've got to do it. I think we can. And if you hear some of the people that have been speaking and the work that's been done, and I think, you know, if you look at, and I'll give a lot of credit to Colin. Colin came back to the townships. And are we ever happy that he did? And to be able to group people around a common mission of making sure that we continue to try and struggle with our vitality. And we're not here just to survive, we're here to thrive. So I think I've probably greatly exceeded my time limit. And thank you for this opportunity. It was a pleasure. And it feels encouraging to hear people who have done the research and who are articulate on these matters.